Welcome everyone to another quick discussion here. The other day I noticed that for the good old Grub bootloader that looks as ugly as you could imagine, which is also by YNT2, I patch Grub2 since, and even Grub1 since forever. We even basically had, actually I should have left this open. I believe there was a screenshot. Basically, we had already the best looking Grub 1. See where I just had this open. I should not have closed it. I patched, or here is that. In my opinion, because otherwise Grub 1 already looked like garbage. Basically similar to that. So I patched already the Grub, the bloody menu shit away. And with some background, it looked like that. And I wonder now if... and so initially Grub2 couldn't really do much more, but since some years, as people were actually installing other alternative bootloaders like refined, the fork of Refi, whatever, I think. Anyway, so people even installed stuff like that just to have a prettier boot, which I mean looks relatively okay. It's just a little bit toyish, but yeah, I always wonder why people come up with such, I mean, quite functional, but in my opinion not the super most professional looking. The Apple, I mean, obviously reimagined from the Apple boot menu stuff, but I would call this Apple boot menu thing looks a little bit more refined and stuff. But anyway, the point of today is I found here Grub themes just the other day, a relatively newish stuff. I don't quite know the history, maybe. It sounded to me like maybe this is inspired, this is modern GFX menu stuff from Grub2, from Burg, which probably was it a... I believe Burg was a more graphical version fork of Grub. Certainly Grub reverse. Brand new bootloader based on Grub, which using the for model laws. Yeah, but this is also not, as far as I know, not maintained anymore. Do they have code document forum? Oh, this launchpad. Yeah, maybe that was, I wasn't there back in the day, just doing that stuff, but it sounds to me, if you are closer to that matter, correct me in the comments below. So anyway, nowadays this menu stuff is in Grub2, so today we can theme Grub2 as pretty as that. And I don't know what other distribution are shipping, as you know, recurring subscribers already know, we have here our own distribution for 25 years. And due to that, I'm busy and I cannot try all the other 1970 dual link distributions. So maybe I also know some other distributions boot with other EFI stuff and whatever stuff, or Petit Boot and PowerPC Land and P3 Land. So basically I wonder, should we start theming Grub2 by default like that? That is a question. I will probably try that. I wonder, I mean, given that modern stuff anyway runs in EFI frame buffer, the drawback could only, what could the drawback be? It always, what are the pros and cons? Pros, it looks better, maybe even more professional. The drawback could be, the con could be, it doesn't, I mean, bugs, right? Crashing your boot process with some graphic blitting out of bounds. But given that modern EFI stuff usually boots in graphic simple frame buffer mode already anyway, there's probably not that much to lose. What I already hate a little bit is that all the stuff is apparently, I don't know if they have scaling, but basically they have here all those backgrounds and stuff in, hello, do we also have here something? Oh, this is black. Whatever. So yeah, I wish this would be scaling. I don't know if they have support for scaling, or if that needs to be, or scaling looks shitty, I don't know. But anyway, what I will probably do is I will package this now, later tonight, and give it a try. I anyway had some ideas. So the other thing is I actually super hate, that is also so silly, it will not solve one issue. I was actually looking into that for another reason, because I noticed for some architectures, like the open firmware, PowerPC, open firmware, Sun, previous videos, right? How did I get to this? I really hate this stupid menu redrawing. I only looked into this because I patch already this border away by default. Because in my opinion also looks super ugly. Our Grub2 default looks already like more like our old legacy Grub1 here without this stupid border. But the problem is that the redrawing is super slow, right? And that is the thing. In my opinion, the ideal interface, this kind of menu thing, it looks so simple, right? But over a serial console and even real hardware, I think it was even slow on, but it might be that, might it be? At least on the Sun T4, it was even slow on real hardware, this redrawing. And that is, of course, super annoying, right? Because it with 9, especially over serial console, especially on all the vintage, or even until recently, even the Sun Oracle T4 has a default baud of 9600, although you probably can change it. I really didn't do that. Maybe I should more often change it to 115K baud. Because the thing is, it draws this here all the spaces, right? So like even the refresh on multi-threaded gigahertz monster, and then your serial console refresh. I probably should test secure shelling onto the embedded management controller for advanced light out management. Maybe that is faster. I read that it probably can support SS secure shell. But my point is, I would even argue, like if we want to argue interface and UI and UX, also yes, it's text mode UI, but UI is UI even if it's text mode. I would even argue that this interface is not ideal. I would even say this Zilo bootloader interface, Zilo and others of, oh that is funny, Zilo and Yaboot of just printing the prompts. Of course, you look for this stuff. Basically, I would need my own. They have just a prompt. One of the worst is, by the way, they're all not amazing. I mean, they're of course all old code bases of fixed function and stuff. But I would even argue that the Hewlett-Packard PA risk is one of the super most annoying. That is such an annoying bootloader in my opinion. It's really silly that we still create new bootloaders. I would argue, because the menu redrawing is so freaking slow, I would argue just the prompts that like Zilo and Yaboot is more optimal, especially like I mean, and that is the thing, right? All the efforts for theming, and all you want is, I mean, first of all, you don't want to see your bootloader much, you just want to boot anyway, and then just the prompt for editing was actually kind of sort of enough, and then tab completion, like you have your prompt here, like if you have your prompt here, like Zilo, whatever, and then like boot default Linux, and then if you do nothing or press enter, you boot this. Otherwise, you have tab completion, and then you like type Linux tab, and then get Linux whatever completed and stuff, and your options like Linux whatever. No, obviously not like 6.1 whatever, and fallback and or slow Laris. It's like, yeah, this is kind of sorter. And then, I mean, if you do something significant, you anyway go into command line editing JavaScript. But anyway, the other thing is, of course, that it is crazy. The irony is, I just say it's crazy that we still write bootloaders. And I said this in my operating system design stuff. I still dream about continuing my microkernel stuff. And I said this with my nano microkernel idea stuff. I would even have have a nano hardware abstraction layer stuff like BIOS and bootloader, and use this for not even having a bootloader, because the crazy stuff is that Grub is so large. I said this the other day, so many 50 or hundreds megabytes of sources, and like it's basically in this modern Grub stuff, it is crazy how much re-implemented code this is, right? You have a BIOS, and that is my point with my nano microkernel. Like, you can search for that video on my more main channel there from some 2 years ago. And how often even modern BIOSes have graphic stuff, right? So we have system firmware, initialization and driver stuff, and UI implemented in the BIOS, then in the bootloader, then in the Linux kernel, and for the most part, except UI, except frame buffer scrolling and stuff, at least the whole virtual terminal. And then in X or Wayland and Qt and GDK, this is really too many. I mean, sure, they all have a different level of features and functions and stuff, but it's crazy that how many times we have drivers like firmware, bootloader, like firmware BIOS bootloader, Linux kernel and other UI stuff. And it's the same for Ethernet, right? Ethernet network stacks and so on. So for my micro, because it would be so amazing if you would have some font library and modules that would be reused one-to-one for your early boot stuff. And it's also crazy, right? If you have a modern, which we don't have by default, usually, at least in T2. But then other distributions also do other progress splash screen stuff, right? And imagine if you have a really fancy, which I personally also, for complexity and stuff, not the greatest fan of, but just for the looks, kicks and giggles, you have splash and boot progress stuff of systemd visualization OS stuff. It's like, yeah, you run an operating system in an operating system in a hypervisor in a BIOS and in some UI, and then you run Emacs on top of that, operating system in operating systems in operating systems. Anyway, this is probably one of the last things I have. Maybe I'm procrastinating a little bit of, I actually have like one last thing. I mean, except previous video, optimizing the heck out of the Linux kernel for performance, and more performance. I have actually 3 other, like cross-compile, Unicode, and here in this to fix. I wonder if, I mean, yeah, sometimes you also need to do some nice things, and it's like, yeah, arguably theming your bootloader might actually be more fun than looking to some cross-compiled ICU Unicode library things. But yeah, leave in the comments below. It's last but not least, I mean, between you don't want to see your bootloader and you literally don't want to spend like 0 time in there, except if you dual boot another lesser operating system, other operating system. You basically don't want to see it, right? All the efforts. The only thing is, it's basically, is it 2 or 1? It boils down to like 1 point, right? It's the first you boot your operating system from download or stuff. It's your first contact with an operating system, and the more professional and polished it's basically the first look, right? Maybe you shouldn't underestimate a good-looking bootloader. If the bootloader looks already crap, then the first impression of an OS, it's already down the toilet, maybe. But leave in the comments below. So from that argument, first impression counts. From that point, it might be amazing, but the irony is, of course, in theory, I would want to do everything less complex and less code duplication. So, I mean, yeah, re-implementing everything for my nano microkernel hardware abstraction layer stuff, it's of course magnitudes more work. So just applying some theme, some lipstick on this pig that is grub. It's of course a low-hanging fruit of one last thing before we release the best release of T2 ever. So maybe for the best release and optimized T2 release ever. Maybe not the worst thing of procrastination to do, but leave in the comments below how much do you care, which theme have you tried. Sebastian Moser says T2 ISO can't find the NVMe drive on the laptop. That is strange, never had that issue. Which ISO did you use? I constantly use, I have no, is it in the installer? But yeah, I mean, maybe it's probably the first time you use T2, right? The crazy thing is, like, when I get reports like this, like, never happened for me. I obviously use NVMe plenty, including obviously on that here. So yeah, I don't have this issue, but I basically never had this issue. NVMe, you worked for me for half a decade, or how old NVMe is, but yeah, I should have. By the way, which ISO did you use? There is a test ISO, right, from the other month. I have here binary incoming of, I probably should name it incoming. So you could test that. I should name it incoming. That is, yeah, we're working on it. As you see live on this channel, we're working on making everything more amazing. 22. Okay, interesting. How did you? So at which stage does it not see that? But you could, if you have time and motivation stuff, you could try the 23.1 build from the other month. One last thing, and drop me a note or like YouTube comment or send me an email with the result. That would be amazing. And also the details where, which step, installer or after booting. Any chance bootloader spec being widely? I don't know. It's hard to tell. I mean, people are pretty happy with what they boot. It's booting is a mess and chaos, right? We also have the thing of EFI versus U-boot and RISC-V. There's like diversity. So, question: there's a full tutorial for T2 Linux in your channel. I have a installing T2 in 2 minutes or something, even 4K. But here, 5 minutes even. I probably should make a new one. So yeah, drop me an email how this other new ISO goes, and what you're saying, driver file steps. You mean with my maybe Matthew Smith means drivers file systems that support different features. Maybe you mean what I mean with re-implementing all the drivers, which my nano microkernel stuff more main channel. We will do more low-level stuff this year. Maybe even we will see how far I will get. We will do some. You want to, if this stuff is interesting, you want to share, like, and subscribe. This year will definitely be the year where I will continue with low level, because obviously T2 is in an amazing shape. We have new developers that help me. We have our data AI. It is optimized. Its features and more features. You sure it's the two other big things are certainly graphical installer maybe, and which I'm personally the most interested in, and also more desktop environments. But otherwise, there will be more low-level stuff, bootloader, microkernel, hello world on other architectures, you name it. I will probably target one major thing a month or so. I don't currently. The more you share, like, subscribe, the more I can do. I don't really have more time right now. But you probably, what you said, what I also said, right? All the LVM, all the file systems, BetterFS, all the features, or even things ZFS re-implemented for even firmware, right? Firmware, BIOS, bootloader, and the kernel and user space for file system tools. It is crazy. Could be so much better. So yeah, I will try this out later tonight, package that. Maybe as a first, this here looks, I mean, I would probably go with something relatively simple, modern looking, maybe. Actually, I have ideas for other stuff, but I will probably, like this looks actually quite okay, I would say. If it works flawlessly, I will probably make it the default for the next ISO. And maybe later we can change this to some T2 specific graphic and stuff, but I don't really have spare time right now to draw this stuff myself. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. Maybe you see the first time that Grub can be themed so pretty, but otherwise it is, of course, as I said, first look and the difference of the first impression that it makes. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. I have to go, and I hope to see you soon for all the next fun stuff to come.